Thanks, everybody. Just mutes on unless you've got something to share. Then that'll kind of keep everybody being able to hear. So we'll start again. Thanks, everybody, for coming and joining. This is our October Connection Heroes webinar. We do these every month. And the idea is that we hang out and talk for an hour about a topic that's related to human connection in the workplace. That maybe is something we don't get enough time in our day-to-day lives, work lives, to really think about. And today we're looking at the well-being gap. We're looking at the impact that this disconnected workplace we find ourselves in is having on the health of ourselves and our teams. And for those that don't know me, I'm Di Gates. I'm the founder of Connection Heroes, and we deliver science-backed training that helps build better team connection, really focused in on this hybrid workplace that we're in. Joining me today, I have two brilliant guests. I have Niraj Nair, who is the MD of Physiotherapy Matters. Niraj is a really experienced chartered physiotherapist, 15 years working in occupational health. And Niraj and his team work with large employers all over the UK, advising on how they can help their teams stay healthy. So hello, Niraj, thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me today.
Really looking forward to your insights today. Obviously, we've stolen a sneaky chat ahead of today, so I know you've got lots of value to bring when we're looking at the impact of the workplace on people's kind of physical health and what we can do to help. So really looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
And we also have Dr. Jen Cotton. Jen, I've known for an awfully long time, and Jen is the founder of a brilliant organisation called TalkWorks, and a consultant clinical psychologist with over 20 years of helping people with their mental health, and that's in community settings as well as workplace settings. So hi Jen, thanks for joining us.
Hi Di, hello everyone, thanks for having us.
Absolute pleasure. And again, same Joe, you and I have kicked this around quite a lot, this kind of link between disconnection in the workplace and the impact on mental health. So again, I'm sure everyone's going to really love hearing from you. In terms of a little bit of kind of like context for today, the reason that we founded Connection Heroes is because there is absolutely undoubtedly a connection crisis in the workplace. This absolutely wasn't caused by the pandemic, and it's not the result of us working from home a lot more. It's much deeper than that. And the changes that have been driving people to have different feelings about work have been happening for decades, really. And we find ourselves in a situation where people are disconnecting from the people and their places at work just more quickly than they ever have done before. And this is having lots of impacts both on kind of people's well-being and also on the productivity and the profitability of business. And we are starting to see data that's kind of like backing a lot of this up now. So we are seeing employee engagement at its lowest rate ever. And clearly there's a direct correlation between engagement and absenteeism on productivity, on retention. We're also seeing really high incidences of loneliness and isolation. And it's really important to state that when we're talking about these instances of loneliness, this is not because people purely are working from home. Loneliness is a state, it's a feeling. It's about whether or not we feel that we are seen and heard, and whether we're valued and trusted in the work that we do. And when we work with organisations, we work with fully remote organisations, hybrid organisations, and some organisations who are still largely kind of office-based or workplace-based. And this isolation is genuinely about how people feel, whether they feel seen, valued, heard and trusted. It's not about physical proximity. So in all of this context and of this disconnection, one of the things we find when we're out working with organisations is when human connection is strong, when people do feel seen and heard, when people do trust and value their colleagues, a lot of that is kind of invisible. So that connection happens in private moments, when somebody notices that you're having an off day, when someone just reaches out to help when you hadn't directly asked for it. So a lot of these connection moments are kind of largely invisible. But when connection starts to break down, that's really visible and really strong. And when we're out delivering our training, people tell us about their experiences. And some of the things that they say to us are things like, feels like we're self-employed, especially for those working from home a lot. They'll log on to Teams or Slack or whatever their productivity platforms are and be faced with just a list of tasks, a list of challenges, and it feels like they're theirs and theirs alone to start working on. They don't feel like they're part of a team. Now, I'm one of those weirdos that's always been self-employed, so I'm okay with that. Most people aren't, and most people take a job with an organization because they want to feel part of a team, and people aren't feeling that at the moment. When connection breaks down, we see a lot of this as well. People tell us that they're not allowed to waste time on chit chat. And this enrages me. This absolutely enrages me, because meetings, whether these are online or face-to-face, these are our greatest opportunities to build connection, to build relationships. And any business school in any part of the world that has ever published anything on effective teamwork tells us that the foundation for that teamwork is trust. It's psychological safety. And in order to build that, we need to chit chat, we need to engage, we need to prioritize relational elements of our meetings, not just transactions. There are a few people nodding on that. Are people, the meetings and the chit chat is probably the biggest thing that we're finding is enraging people, because these are the only chance we've got when we're working remotely to really build those relationships up. People are also telling us, oh, where's my chat not working? People are telling us that they've stopped asking for help. They've stopped asking for help from their colleagues because they don't like to bother people. They don't like to be either show vulnerability or show weakness, and they don't want people to think that they need help with tasks that they perhaps feel that they should be able to do. And that's really problematic for organizations, because it means small problems that could be easily resolved are not getting resolved, and they're snowballing. And the stress that that brings to people is incredible, because again, this feeling of being self-employed and not sharing is really having an impact on people's sense of well-being. And likewise, managers are saying that when they've got teams based all over the place and they don't know those teams very well, it's really hard for them to give honest feedback. So everybody's being very, very polite in the workplaces, but we're not being honest, and we're not giving kind, and we're not giving people the sort of feedback they need for their own personal development. So these are the sort of things that we're seeing when disconnection breaks down, and the data is proving that there is a mental and a physical health cost of this. So CIPD's research that came out earlier this year is saying that 25% of people are now saying that work has a negative impact on their mental health, and about the same number are saying that there's a negative impact of work on their physical health. And this is not okay, and this is what we're going to dive into today with our experts, with Jen and Neeraj. And Jen, I'll start with you, if I may.
Sure.
I know we've chatted about this quite a lot, but it'd be great if you can just take us back to basics. And when we're talking about people facing workplaces with these connection challenges, and we're talking about the impact on mental health, what are we talking about? What does mental health for good and for bad look like in the workplace?
Yeah, okay. Well, when we're talking about mental health, I guess we're talking about how people think, how we feel, and how we relate to others. And when we're talking about that based in the workplace, it's, while we're doing my job, everybody's got mental health, just like we've got physical health, and it fluctuates over time for good and for better. But good mental health often looks like connection, focus, managing stress well. So it's not avoiding stress altogether, but managing it well when it crops up, and having a sense of purpose. When we see poor mental health at work, it might show up as irritability, being a bit snippy with people, having low energy or presenteeism when we rock up to work and we're there but not really there. So if we think about physical health is what maybe helps our bodies to function well, our mental health is what helps our mind and our relationships to function really well.
And I think, yeah, we spend so much of our lives, don't we, as humans now, cognitively, feels like we are disconnected. So when we are talking about people being mentally strong for work, the majority of us now, that's driven by our cognitive health, isn't it? Our ability to focus, to think straight.
Yeah, isn't it just? And, like the 40-hour work week was designed, wasn't it, with a stay-at-home partner in mind. It wasn't necessarily designed for today's challenges and busy lives that we were all leading. So our cognitive load is so much greater than it ever has been. And it's understandable that that's coming out in terms of people experiencing mental ill health.
So I've never thought about that. So yeah, the 40-hour week was on the assumption that you could use all of your brain power on doing your work because you had the little lady at home to
Yeah, you had a little wife at home who was, you know, looking after the kids or looking after the household, making the dinner, doing the shopping, but making everything easier for you so that when you got home, you were just at home. And many of us don't have that luxury.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, most people who are in a two-adult kind of household and with two adults working, they're both working at double capacity of our cognitive load was designed for, plus doing the household. Yeah, that's really interesting. And why should, I mean, it should be a no-brainer, but it's not, because incidents of mental ill health in the workplace are on the rise. So you must have conversations with leaders compelling them to invest more in supporting their team's mental health. Like, why should they? If we've got people on the call today who want to convince their SLT that they should be doing more to support the team's mental health, like, what's the ROI? What's the business benefit of doing this?
I mean, it matters, right? So mental health matters to people, it matters to performance, it matters to the business bottom line. There was Deloitte look at this every year, don't they? But their last year report, the 2024 report, found that poor mental health impacts UK employers to the tune of over £50 billion a year. And mostly that's from those folk who are showing up to work but struggling to function at their very best. But the good news is that for every £1 that's invested in workplace mental health, there's an average of £5 return through reduced absence, better engagement, better performance, improved retention. So it feels like, although there is absolutely a moral responsibility here for leaders to care about mental health, there's also, I guess, a strategic rationale as well. And leaders have that chance, don't they, to set the tone for psychological safety. And we know that teams do perform better when people feel safe to speak up, to ask for help, to admit when they're struggling, when you've got somebody available who's looking out for them. And leaders don't have to be therapists, right? They just need to be human, to be curious.
Our last month's webinar was on inclusion, and we looked in particular about women at point of menopause, and we looked at neurodiversity. And both speakers there came back with, what we need from leaders is curiosity and compassion, way more than policies.
100%.
I think people are scared, aren't they? People are scared to have conversations about mental health, and it's harder right now. Like, if people are working from home, I mean, are you seeing in the clients that you work with, are you seeing any either different types of or level of mental health challenges coming through now people are working a lot more remotely? So anything?
I mean, absolutely, loneliness is key, and I would completely agree with what you were saying earlier about people feeling like they're self-employed but without any of the flexibility or advantage of being self-employed. So loneliness, we're seeing folk come through our clinic in droves reporting that, particularly middle-aged men, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I've been directing quite a few of them to Andy's Man Club of late, and because they do excellent work for men who maybe don't have that peer group or aren't confident in talking about their emotions generally.
I did a talk a couple of months ago. It was for the Northeast Waste and Recycling Forum, and I didn't know how a conversation with a group of it was a room full of blokes in high-vis jackets, or those branded gilets. That's a very kind of practical, like out on the field workers, mainly blokes in their 50s. And I really didn't know how a talk on human connection was going to go down. And the impact was crazy. That the people that came up to speak to me afterwards, apparently that is the sector with the highest rate of male suicide of any sector in the UK. And but men were drawn into that. Men who don't like to feel comfortable sharing and aren't likely to have open conversations about their mental health get drawn into careers where they can work in that isolated male environment. And do you see any trends in types of sectors where issues tend to be more prominent? Or
yeah, I do. I'm just noticing Charlotte's mentioned something in the chat there as well. So especially the blue collar worker. Yeah, it is. It's really hard to encourage men to speak up and not just to stay in their cars on their brakes. We work with a number of manufacturing firms, so tier one suppliers of Nissan, and we do see that people just isolating themselves at break time, rather than feeling alone in a busy, crowded canteen.
And that's hard for employers, right, isn't it? If you're in that situation, kind of where does your responsibility start and end? If someone wants to spend their break time in their car and not engage, isn't there an argument to say, as their manager, you kind of have to lead them to it? Like, where's the line there?
Yeah, I think what you're looking for often as a manager is a change, though, is a change in patterns of behaviour. So I worked with one gentleman, and actually when he was referred into us, his line manager had mentioned to us and to him that one of the key aspects that they'd noticed that was different in his behaviour was that he'd started eating his dinner in the car, and he had been the life and soul beforehand, and then that had led on to another conversation. Actually, I've noticed that you're different. What's going on? And he was quite unhappy at home, and then sort of support from us in terms of his depression and marital conflict.
So what I'm hearing there, and do keep the chat going in the chat. Do please share, and we'll bring in your thoughts. Jolie saying there about the tough financial climate, people having worries that are building up outside work. I mean, this is tough, isn't it? And I can imagine a lot of employers saying, yeah, but that's, I'll deal with the mental health issues that arise 9 till 5 or on site. But that's not the world we live in, is it? Our worlds, which we're going to come back to a couple of times, I think, today, everything's just mashing up a little bit, isn't there? And how do we define what is a workplace? Is there such a thing as a workplace mental health?
I don't think so, Di. I really don't. We work with a whole range of different employers, and what I see time and time again is people who are experiencing life events that are occurring outside of the workplace are absolutely having an impact on how they perform at work. So an employer is then saying, okay, what can I do to make things better for this individual? And in our case, often that's a referral for therapeutic support, but it doesn't have to be. It might just be, closer line management and more connection in the workplace generally.
Yeah, it's really challenging, isn't it? And I'm gonna start to bring Neeraj in, because I think we're going to see a lot of similarities in patterns coming through with mental and physical. But to sort of like bridge us into Neeraj, Jen, and I know we've spoken about this. Where do you see the link, or how do you see the link playing out between sort of these mental health issues and people's physical health issues? Because again, I think historically in the workplace we've talked about bad backs or people therapy in the workplace has been around longer than mental health support in the workplace. But I know you've got quite strong views on the strong link between them.
Yeah, I mean, they're two sides of the same system, right? Your physical and your mental health. So if you've got poor mental health, that's affecting your sleep, your energy, your immunity, and your poor physical health affects your mood, your motivation, your concentration, your sleep. And I talk about sleep because I often think that that's one of the best early warning signs that something's not quite right. It's the foundation, I suppose, of your wellbeing pyramid, supporting other wellbeing factors. But if you're struggling, if you're fatigued, if you're mentally exhausted, physically exhausted, we start then to make poor choices. So which of us hasn't eaten a family-sized bag of crisps when they're knackered, or stayed up too late doom scrolling when they're sad, rather than going to bed and get some rest, which might be slightly better for us? So mental fatigue absolutely feeds into our physical habits and creates this negative cycle.
I'm gonna bring kind of you here in Neeraj as well, because I mean, Jen says, and I this is not my own expertise, but it's something I've read and listened a lot about this health pyramid, and sleep being the foundation for so much. Presumably, for most of us, we don't sleep while we're in our contracted hours. From your perspective, how do you help leaders understand, when it comes to physical health in the workplace, what is and isn't their responsibility? It's complicated, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is complicated, but I suppose Jen and I, we both work with a number of these organisations, the tier 1 providers for Nissan, for example, and there's some really good HR team members that we work with these days that are really engaged with health and well-being, which makes it easier from that perspective. However, going down a level to sort of line managers, they still see it as, in certain industries, as something else that's just on their plate to manage. and they don't feel equipped sometimes, or sometimes they just don't have the time as well, which is the big thing, because whether it's physical health or mental health, it's giving those employees that time, isn't it, is the big thing.
We find that most of the work that we do with organisations, we're working with managers, and I don't think there's been a time when managers have been under as much pressure, being asked to deal with as many really varied kind of changing requirements. The latest data that's come out says that managers are now 70% of the reason, or the influence on how engaged a member of team that the team feels. So like employee engagement is no longer an HR job, it's a manager's job. If after employee well-being isn't an HR job now, it's a manager's job. That's quite a tough gig, yeah.
And a lot of these managers are not equipped to do so, because a lot of them have sort of stepped into managerial roles just because that's natural progression, not necessarily had any training or to actually how to manage individuals, which I know it's not necessarily, I'm not necessarily talking about just the physical side of things, but it has a huge impact, because the way we assess individuals now is very different to the way we were taught at university 25 years ago. Now I qualified, and it was a very biomedical approach to assessments, whereas now it's a very biopsychosocial approach to assessment. So there's a huge overlap between physical and mental health. So we will ask a number of things when we're, say, assessing an individual as well, from obviously the problem that they're having from a physical health point of view, but also what is their mental health currently as well, because that'll have a huge amount of impact on their physical health. And what are their relationships like with line managers? What are policies and procedures like within the workplace as well? So they all make a difference.
And is there, so from your perspective, that's quite interesting. What you're looking for and what you're assessing when you're doing kind of a health review has changed radically in 25 years.
Massively.
Managers are kind of responsible to try and understand, but they're under-supported, under-skilled. Like, is there a basic legal requirement? Is there some black and white that, as an employer, you are responsible for X, Y, and Z? Is there that level of clarity?
On certain things, yes. So say workstation assessments for DSE workers. So a DSE assessment is required for anyone that works for part of their day using DSE equipment, to display screen equipment, that is, or for an hour or longer at a time. That's probably most people now, to be honest, that need to have a DSE assessment. And it can be as little as a tick box exercise where you do a self-assessment and it's just filed away, or as it can be actually a way of actually tapping into a overall well-being of an individual as well, and looking at things like, do we encourage people to take regular breaks? How are we actually connecting with those individuals to promote health and well-being as well? We're seeing a lot more people sitting at a workstation for 7, 8, 9, 10 hours a day now. So you're seeing that impact of actually sitting being the new smoking, is what it's called these days as well. So that all has an impact.
Well, and that brings us on. I've got a quick question, because I want to dig into that a little bit more. I want to kind of say, the change in these working patterns, and the fact that most of us now are working from our own physical environment, out of the line of sight of our managers. So I want to pick up on that. But just had a question in from Jolie here. It's quite a specific one that links to what we've just been talking about. Jolie's saying, I have a lot of employees who struggle with sleep fatigue from autoimmune conditions and pain conditions, which therefore affects their ability to emotionally regulate, which can affect their presentation at work. So the question is, what would you recommend for Jolie to say to these employees about being able to emotionally regulate whilst feeling tired and in pain? So this is a really interesting one, because this is, born of tiredness and emotional regulation, but it's also managing physical pain. So I'd invite you both to kind of respond to Jolie's question there. What can she say? How can she have conversations that are helpful?
Yeah, I think this is some types of conditions like this are chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia as well. So those are two common conditions we see that have a massive overlap from a mental health and physical health perspective. And like I was saying, the reason we assess someone from a biopsychosocial approach is because we know that physical health you can't separate that from mental health, and vice versa as well. So this is where it is looking at the management of an individual overall and not just that condition. So yes, we can give them general exercises and tools to help manage a chronic symptom or condition, but also we need to give them that support as well, and also the tools of how they can support themselves as well, but allow that as well, so that can be simple things like having a switch off and switch on time as such really, which for home workers, which I know we're going to touch on, the problem with home workers is that sometimes they'll get out of bed and just sit straight onto the laptop, and they're not commuting to and from work, they're not connecting with anyone, and they're not sort of logging in, logging off. There's no start and finish time to the day, which then means that when they do eventually stop working, they'll go and sit in front of a TV as well. So and that's going to impact their sleep. And we talk about the screen time and all those aspects as well.
So there's maybe a conversation that Jolie could have, which is looking at kind of the structure of the working day, clear transitions, space and time, to move so that we're not going from one inappropriate sitting condition to another with no break. Jen, is there anything on the emotional regulation side that you could maybe steer Jolie or anyone else on the call? Because again, I don't think this is a one-off, is it? I think this is...
No. It's interesting, isn't it? I guess it's just got me thinking about spoons theory. Have you come across that before? Just in terms of measurement of your capacity in the day, and maybe that might be, a shared language with the employee who's experiencing the pain.
Can you explain that a little bit, Jen?
Yeah. So often in chronic pain psychology, we talk about, you might have a limited amount of capacity for dealing with events in the day, and we often talk about having just 3 spoons full, and thinking about how you pace yourself with that. And once your spoons are gone, they're gone. So if you've got something particularly challenging for you, that's going to cost you a spoon. So that might be, attending a webinar, or it might be dealing with a tricky customer that day. You might then be pacing yourself differently following on from that, and trying to find a bit of a shared understanding of what is zapping their energy and maybe what is replenishing it for them.
I think that's a really interesting duality, and that comes up quite a lot when we're doing kind of connection training. We can help our teams to both manage their time and their energy. And the one thing about time is we can't create any more time in the day. The days are set. Well, we can, but the way in which we create more time in our working day is starting before 9 and starting after 5. It's not healthy, and it detracts from other areas. But we can create more energy if we learn to understand what detracts it and what adds to us. So I think that kind of idea of managing time and the structure and the timing and the structure of your day, Neeraj, which is perhaps, it's more pragmatic, isn't it, and linked to stuff that we understand better, but managing energy.
Yeah, so I mean, so simple tools are something we'll give to individuals. We do a bit of a training session for surviving the home office, we call it as such. And what we say is that you would normally commute to work, and that might take, for some people, might take 20 minutes, and for a lot of people, it might take an hour. And you would then leave work and go home. So actually, you would normally get up at that certain time to do that. So can you do the same routine, but instead of commuting to work, you go out for a walk, or you go and do a bit of exercise at the start of your day, and then you start your day. And then the time that you'd normally leave work and finish work, can you do the same thing at the end of the day and actually finish your work and actually go and switch off and go and either go for a walk again, and spend that time that you'd normally spend in your car or spend in public transport, actually be able to find the start and end time to your day.
Yeah, that aligns exactly with a couple of comments that people have, Jackie and John have just shared in the chat, that idea. I think you shared a statistic, I think, Neeraj, about just like the drop in activity levels since working from home.
Massively. There's a I can't remember the statistics off the top of my head actually, but the actual figures. But yeah, there's twofold actually. There's one for that actually a lot of jobs now are automated, or a lot of them are done online and such now. So whereas previously there was a lot more manufacturing roles previously, and also you do a lot more physical activity at work. Whereas now there's less, even those manufacturing roles, a lot of things are you've got machinery doing things,
Mm.
so you're not physically doing a lot of activity. And the ones which are a lot more people are working on a workstation, those again become more sedentary as well in their normal life, in comparison to, say, certain places in the world where there will still be physical activity and work within their workplace. So, and then you've got the home workers. So again, they don't need now, from a step point of view, where people were averaging 7 to 10,000 steps. Some people are averaging 1,000 steps in the day, even less sometimes. My own daughter, 60. I've got two daughters, two extremes. I've got a 12-year-old and a 16-year-old. And my 16-year-old will joke and say, "Oh, I've done 200 steps today." And my 12-year-old, who's needs to go on the go constantly, she'll say, "I've done 20,000 steps today." And there will be that massive disparity between the two of them. And you see that.
Both wearing them as a badge of honour.
Yeah. But yes, you're seeing that with home workers as well, that actually they don't need to leave the house and a lot of days, and they don't want to leave the house. And then actually when it becomes like their norm for them, they then think, actually, I might be a week before I've left the house.
So that. You see, I feel this, and I think probably a lot of people on the call feel this, and we know it to be true, but we're kind of almost trying to ignore it because we don't really want to face the fact that we're so sedentary now that the average step count has gone down to like 2,000 from 10,000. But what you also said then was, so we're not really leaving the house, but we kind of don't want to. And I wanted to bring you in, Jen, on that, because that's true, isn't it? We're all starting to just get a little bit comfy in our caves. Are you seeing that?
Very much so, yeah. And I mean, a lot of what we talk about in therapy, for folk who are feeling depressed, is about activating and finding something we would call behavioral activation, something that you can do, often outside of the house, that will significantly improve your mood. The evidence for that in terms of depression is that it's stronger than antidepressants for mild to moderate depression. So we do need to be, increasing our levels of exercise and activity and getting out, but often we're not. But this is where I think the dog walkers have just got life nailed, because like my dog, and I haven't.
Yeah, you can hear mine barking in the background earlier. Sorry about that.
But that sort of sense of connection with your pet, but then also you've got to leave the house, haven't you, several times a day.
I remember we had a chat, Neeraj, when we were prepping for this, and you were talking about, which I think is useful knowledge, is this, what's our optimum time for concentration on tasks? Because I know, speaking for myself and a lot of the people that we work with in our workshops, because we haven't got this same structure today, and we haven't got forced intervention by a colleague coming over, we do just we just work on, even if we somewhere in the back of our brains know we've gone past our sort of optimal concentration level, we just crack on. But Neeraj, you were saying, was it sort of 30 to 40 minutes is the ideal?
Yeah, so somewhere between 30 and 60 minutes. It varies from which you read to another. And we know that from school, really. And it's taught there, even you're revising for exams, GCSEs and things, to do stints of 30 minutes or up to a maximum of 60 minutes. And then you need to switch off from that, move around. It doesn't have to be a long break. We're not saying to give everyone half an hour every 30 minutes to have a break. That would be very nice, but it's not going to happen, is it? But 5 minutes to move around, stretch. And there's even for eye health, they talk about the 20-20-20 rule. So every 20 minutes, stare at something 20 meters away for 20 seconds to relieve that eye strain.
Say that again. I've heard this, but I bounced around, but I've never really engaged my brain to understand it. Say that again. So 20.
So it's 20-20-20. So every 20 minutes, stare at something 20 meters away.
Right.
20 feet away, sorry, not 20 meters away, 20 feet away for 20 seconds.
Okay. That is because we are on our screens an inordinate amount of time, aren't we? So many of us. Thanks.
And we're all guilty. I mean, we work in healthcare, and Jen and I will both admit that we can sometimes be in front of a screen for doing a tender or something. You might be in front of a screen for 5-6 hours before you even looked away.
Yeah.
And we know it's not good for us, but can we put measures in place? I mean, I can't believe actually there's not a program that automatically tells you that you need to take a break and get up. I mean, in cars these days, if you're sort of veering off slightly the center, it'll tell you stop, take a break, and it'll flash up a warning sign on the car. But I don't know why that doesn't happen on IT programs that actually, after half an hour, stand up, move.
They're incentivized to keep your eyes glued on the screen, aren't they? They're disincentivized. So let's have a reflect here, because we moved on to the area I wanted to move the conversation onto anyway, which is, so we can see and we can hear, and the evidence is backing up that the impact on our mental and physical health of the way so many of us are working now is increasing, and it's increasing negatively. And we can see now, perhaps more than ever, leaders, employers, managers, and just individuals for our own accountability, we need to be looking at our health as part of our working lives, from both a mental and a physical health. And you know what you're saying is the way you learned at university through the assessments 25 years ago is not now how it's done. It is accepted that these are, your phrase, Jen, two sides of the same coin. So we're saying, you know, more structure into the time of the day. You know, start the day with a commute around the block and back to your bedroom. End it. We're talking about maybe getting to be clearer and more in tune with our own ideal concentration window between 30-60 minutes, ideally some sort of reminder or buzz that will make us do something, movement. Jackie used the phrase here, NEAT, non-exercise activity, thermogenesis, which is quite a big word to say after 40 minutes of talking. So we're looking at things like this. Is there anything else that we can do for ourselves? Any maybe early warning signs from a mental or physical health that maybe should signal to us that either our mental or physical health is perhaps not where it should be, and any other kind of like early stage strategies that we could evoke? Jen, I'll go to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, early warning signs are often sleep is a massively, you know, early indicator that something's not quite right. Backing out of stuff that you usually enjoy as well. So if there's something in your life that you usually look forward to, you know that it benefits you, and then you start to avoid that. So that might be, you know, hanging out with your mates, going out for tea, going out for a run, something that you tend to volunteer to do when you're backing off from. And often conflict. So if you find yourself being snippy or irritable with people that you care about, and you notice a change in how you're relating, those three would be top indicators, I think, that something's maybe not quite right.
I think I could probably tick all of those off right now. And so what would you do if you sort of notice these things about yourselves then? Anything immediately that you think you could do is more kind of like that awful phrase of self-care, isn't it? But prioritizing your own mental health, I guess.
It's like, what is prioritize your mental health? Prioritize it as a problem that just in the same way you would if you were facing a problem at work. You know, you'd sit down, you'd put time into it. You know, even if that's just with a pen and paper and not with anybody else. Think, right, okay, I'm not sleeping well. What do I need to do? I need to learn about sleep. I need to establish a habit. I need to, you know, talk to my husband about snoring. Troubleshoot and put time into it, either on your own or with a with a loved one or a professional.
Yeah,
just
that's great.
And put it in.
And Neeraj, from a physical, I mean, I'm saying this sitting on a hard dining room table where I spend half my day working here, or to be honest, towards the end of the week slouching on the sofa. Like, I know I'm not doing things that's good for my body. Like, what are the early warning signs to look out for ourselves in terms of our physical health?
So again, it just highlights the overlap between the physical and mental health. So I would go with it very much similar to what Jen said. So sleep's massive, because if we haven't sort of switched off from work, or we haven't done enough physical exercise, we may be mentally drained by the end of the day, but we're not physically drained as such. So that can affect our sleep as well. And we know, most of us know, that actually if we go and do some exercise, we will sleep better that evening and that night. So that is a massive indicator. Sleep being one of the most important things that we ask as well, as Jen does. And we ask about individuals' sleep. So is it pain that's disturbing it? Is it that they're not able to sleep because they've got some sort of, they can't switch off mentally, or what is it that's disturbing their sleep, really? And we're finding more and more people coming to us and saying just can't sleep. or I've got some sort of insomnia, and it's probably hand in hand that actually they can't switch off mentally, is a big thing. But doing some physical exercise will also help them switch off mentally as well. So that's a big thing. So sleep was one of them. Steps, so average steps, and looking at, and people can look at their steps from most of us look at our steps these days with telephones and smartwatches and things like that, and looking at the average from a week to week basis, and then a month to month basis, and even annual basis, and seeing that if there is a significant decline as well, that's a big indicator straight away.
So you both, what I'm hearing from both of you is to take a little bit more, which isn't something I do, like just a little bit more of an analytical approach, a bit more of a workplace. So sit down with a pen and paper, list the problems, look for solutions, look at the data, look for your step counts, and that is how you would approach a business challenge, I guess, isn't it? So you don't tend to look at yourself in the same way, though, do you?
No.
I mean, these are kind of like early warning signs and looking out for it. We've got on the call kind of people who are all in kind of like management roles or people roles who you know are here on a call like this because they do genuinely take that responsibility seriously. What can managers be doing so we can spot on ourselves if we're not sleeping right, you know, or if we know that we've spent, you know, the last 8 hours on our arse on the sofa? Managers aren't seeing people in the same way that they used to. What can managers do? If we talk about we want managers to be kind of like curious and compassionate, what are the early signs that managers could maybe be looking out for in their teams, or what questions could they be asking, and what context do they need to set in order to ask those questions without feeling really weird? Like, how can managers deal with this, like really genuinely looking out for the well-being of their team, if that team is largely remote? Again, either one, Jen, if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I always think, like, there's a phrase, isn't there? The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, the second best time is now. And so I always think that in terms of looking out for things like signs and symptoms, we need to be establishing a great relationship with the people in our teams from the off. You know, get to know the people in your team, have a small team if you've got power over that. And employers, I think, you know, we shouldn't be having teams of up to 90 people, which I've come across somebody recently who did have 90 people in their
direct reports.
Direct reports, yeah.
Wow.
Can you imagine? How do you know? I mean, you don't even know if they're in work one day, never mind if, you know, they're late for work or feeling under the weather. So smaller teams, checking in with people, getting to know them from the off, and then, you know, learning and to ask questions around, you know, how are you? Anything you need from us as a business to help you to thrive? How's work going? How are you feeling?
Yeah, but normalizing those questions.
Normalizing that, yeah.
We talk a lot about the power of vulnerability as a tool through which to build trust, as a tool through which to build connection. Is there a strong argument for leaders and managers demonstrating, you know, in order to create this open culture? Well, what's the power of leaders kind of demonstrating their openness around kind of mental health and so on?
I mean, you see, when people, you know, and leaders do model culture through their actions and by taking breaks, by logging off, taking your holidays, but also by that vulnerability and admitting when we're feeling stressed or when things aren't going quite so well, or admitting when we need support. And Brené Brown talks about this, doesn't she, saying that leading with vulnerability isn't weakness at all, it's courage in action, I think is one of her phrases. I remember we worked with a team leader, and he'd been referred to us for anxiety, and we worked with him for 10 sessions and to good results in terms of psychological therapy. And he went back and he told everybody in his team, and then another 5 people asked to refer to us for some therapy as well off the back of that. Now, those problems, they existed before, but they just didn't have the confidence to tell him about it. But he had then created a safe space by saying, I've struggled with this, and this is what I did to get some help, which was really powerful.
It's really powerful, you see, and I love stuff like that. And to me, it makes absolute common sense. But I can imagine there were a lot of leaders out there who would consider that opening a can of worms and it creating do all leaders, and this is maybe a rhetorical question, but if anyone's got an answer, you know, are there still leaders who are just not ready for that want these things kept in the can, that genuinely, I had a friend who, and this is awful, her dad had attempted to take his own life, and she went into work the next day. A, the fact that she felt she had to was B, and she was told, so obviously she wasn't on a game. She eventually opened up to a boss who told her she had to leave that sort of stuff at home. Shouldn't bring that stuff through the door. And this has been this year, and in a professional services organisation, and it just terrifies me that attitude can still exist, and whether it's prevalent, I don't know, but it, you know, are there any instances where you found leaders that perhaps have converted from not being the sort of leaders that want to open these cans of worms to people who are happy to chat about it? And if so, what switches that flick?
I mean, it's tricky. I think for every leader that I work with who goes away like this chap and tells everybody that he's been struggling with his mental health and as an advocate, I would say there's probably another 5 leaders that aren't telling a soul. And I can think of some very senior leaders that I've worked with who've asked for out of hours support, asked for video sessions so that they can have them at home and maybe not be caught sight of in the clinic, just because they don't want anybody to know.
Because it's seen as a weakness.
Seen as weakness, yeah.
I mean, which, like Niraj, presumably, if you had a senior leader who, you know, had a shoulder injury from squash or the golf course, there's not that same view of a physical health challenge being a weakness as such, or is there?
There is, unfortunately. Because say if we turn around and say that you should avoid X, Y, and Z for a period of time, sometimes there's that reluctance of actually going back to their team to say, yeah, you should go to physio, because the risk of that, us turning around and saying knock health physio, saying that we should avoid certain activities at work for a period of time to protect this injury. So there is that reluctance. But on the flip side, there is leaders there that come to us, and those are some of the contracts that we've won actually as well, is actually we've treated an MD of a company, and then they've sort of said, oh, this is great, and our team really need this, and actually it would be great for our team's physical well-being as well. And we're seeing a lot of absence or presenteeism with musculoskeletal problems. But it's having that human connection is the key thing, isn't it, really? So which is what we're both saying, really, is that actually humanizing management and leadership, and that's where we've changed from management to leadership anyway. So it's just making sure that leaders do that as well.
I'm a big fan of kind of, you know, if we want to evoke change, we need to demonstrate it, not just describe it. But it does take a certain bravery, and it is brave to be vulnerable as a leader. And I think it's, you know, and to model the sort of behaviours that you want your team. But if we are talking about cultural change and building out these cultures that value connection and well-being, it has to start from the top, and it has to be modelled from the top, or it's non-sustainable.
Great.
I mean, I'd be really interested, kind of from both of you, if you could paint a picture of the ideal future workplace where well-being is kind of prioritized and understood as being of benefit equally for people and for productivity, or equally for people and profit. Niraj, I'll go to you first. What does that ideal future workplace look like and feel like? What's happening, and how does that operate in a way that really does prioritize well-being?
So I think it comes down to even policy and procedures being flexible as such, really. So they're not set in stone. So because not one individual is the same. So being able to be adaptable to your team, it needs to be so policy and procedures need to be quite flexible for managers to support their team from a physical and mental health perspective. That human connection is huge as well. So whether that's starting meetings with just how someone is doing, what they've been up to, what activities they've been up to, sharing what you've been up to, physically and mentally, what's been going on as well. So that's really important as well. So I think that's ideal. I think there's a lot of emphasis on health and well-being in the workplace, and a lot of organisations are sort of wanting to engage with it, but it's actually making sure there's enough time to engage with it as well, and dedicating time. So that's the biggest thing that we find, that is actually, even if higher up they'll turn around and say, actually, we want to put a wellbeing event on, people are not freed up from their work. They're not, are they, unless they're actually forced to say, you have to go and attend this. That's the only way they'll attend. Otherwise, even if it's there, and there'll be plenty of emails saying we're having this event on, but the workload still is their priority.
You can't really mandate someone to care.
No,
It doesn't
no.
really work. It's like we're the same. We talk about kind of like people don't have time to do more. It's impossible to ask them to do more. But what could they maybe do differently? And if we want people to care about connection, well-being, and prioritize it, we have to help them understand and make it relevant to them. You can't just mandate. You can't. A lot of organisations, it feels like they are mandating extra tasks, and neither of those things are going to work. They break.
But it's the leaders doing it. So we do some work with North Tyneside Council, and actually for the environmental team, they had a health and wellbeing event, and actually each team leader, which was great, and this might have come from higher up in their respective managers, but each team leader came with their team. So each team leader came to the event with their team and said, and they sort of led by example, asking the questions and bring their team with them and saying, oh, we're all going to this together. In the same way that you'd set up a meeting, we're all going to this event together, and it wasn't a case of that the team leader wasn't there, which and that helps the rest of the team say, oh, actually, yeah, we do want to engage with this, and also our line manager wants us to engage with this, and our line manager is engaging with this activity as well.
Brilliant. And Jen, final thoughts from you on this future workplace where well-being is kind of like, protected and people are allowed to be their potential. What does that workplace look and feel like?
I think for me, it looks like a culture whereby people feel that they can talk about their mental health in the same way that they might talk about going to the dentist, that it's not hidden, that this is just something I'm doing. Some weeks I have good mental health, some weeks it's less good, but I can talk about it in the same way I would my toothache. And for people to feel at work like they matter and that they belong.
Yeah. No, I think it's so important, isn't it? And I think, that the challenge is perhaps, I'm assuming that everybody on this call is we're all the converted. And it's a case of carrying these conversations going, sharing what works, sharing our data, shifting our own behaviours, and I guess trying to build this change and build this momentum. Which it does feel it's shifting. Things do feel like they are changing for the better, despite these sort of statistics that are coming through. So I suppose with our last kind of I've got a few minutes left. I know some people will have like 1 o'clock calls, so I want to give you kind of time to have a break. I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody for joining us, for Neeraj and Jen for sharing their experience and expertise. I certainly got a lot from that personally. I love the idea of being able to talk about our mental health just as breezily as we do toothache. Neeraj, really appreciate you kind of bringing all of your experience and contribution. I'm especially interested in, this impact that you talk about our declining in our physical activity rate, and how we can kind of like, the need for more structure in our day to just really look after our own mental health, and making sure that, organisations are setting those rules in place to encourage people to have that structure. It's so important. So I just want to say a massive thank you to you guys. If for those on the call, if you want to connect in with Neeraj and Jen, those QR codes there will pop you along to their LinkedIn profiles, which is arguably the easiest way to connect with people these days. If you want to know anything more about kind of what we do at Connection Heroes, that kind of QR code will take you off. I'm experimenting with Linktree at the moment, which is quite a cool little app. It allows you to put like lots of different links off to what you think your best bits are. So that link will take you there to anything that you want to know about me or what we do at Connection Heroes. And if you are interested in kind of doing anything as a result of this, both Jen and Neeraj have services that are really focused in on helping you look after the well-being of your team. So Jen and Talkworks run workshops for managers to help them understand and have conversations with their team about mental health. And Neeraj runs a program, a Wellbeing Matters program, which I think actually, Jen, you guys are involved in as well. I think you partner on that, don't you? Which is a really comprehensive and flexible program. It's a really easy way of getting started. If you're a smaller organisation and new to this, there's still a level of that program that you can get involved with. And our workshops focus in on really helping give your teams and managers the mindset and the skills to keep their hybrid teams connected. So if any of us can help with any challenges that you've got around connection and wellbeing in your workplace, we're really delighted and happy to help. Otherwise, I will bid everybody a fond farewell. Thanks again for joining us. And I hope to see you at our webinar next time round, which will be first week of December. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Di.
Thanks, guys. That was brilliant. Did you enjoy that?
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was nice.